O Porto importa-se, foi muito importante para mim e para o meu marido.
Eu acho que foi das coisas melhores que podia ter acontecido para nós que estamos sós.
Notifications, messages, emails.
Countries with vaccine hesitancy and the lifting of restrictions thought to be contributing. Let's begin with Germany. Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned citizens and is calling for an extra push on vaccinations. Federal and local leaders are meeting to discuss measures to curb a fourth wave of the virus.
Die gegenwärtige Pandemielage in Deutschland ist dramatisch, ich kann es nicht anders sagen. Die vierte Welle trifft unser Land mit voller Wucht. Wir müssen dringend beim Impfen vorankommen. Und deshalb möchte ich auch diese Gelegenheit nutzen, um für das Impfen zu werben. Es ist auch jetzt überhaupt nicht zu spät, sich für eine Erstimpfung zu entscheiden. Denn jeder, der sich impfen lässt, schützt sich selbst und andere. Und wenn sich genügend Menschen impfen lassen, ist das der Weg heraus aus der Pandemie.
Germany reported close to 65,000 COVID-19 infections on Thursday alone, smashing the previous daily record. Angela Merkel is appealing to federal and regional leaders to introduce tougher restrictions. Rules could include mandatory proof of vaccination or negative COVID-19 tests on public transport and at work. Tighter restrictions are also likely to be imposed on leisure activities. Aid for companies and individuals hit by the COVID crisis are likely to be extended by 3 months until March 2022. Angela Merkel is also appealing directly to those who are sceptical about vaccines to change their minds. Only 68% of people in Germany have been fully vaccinated. Only 5% of the population has had booster shots. Belgium has also tightened COVID-19 restrictions, making it mandatory for people to wear masks and enforcing work from home for many. People will have to wear a mask in indoor venues.
Alors qu'il y a une déception et une frustration, je le comprends très bien. Nous avons tous espéré que l'automne aurait été plus léger et qu'on aurait eu un hiver sans corona. Et je sais que de nombreuses personnes sont fatiguées, et en particulier les personnes qui travaillent dans les soins, qui sont de nouveau submergées par la pandémie.
To Austria next, where people are queuing up to get vaccinated against COVID-19. The country has one of the lowest vaccination rates in Western Europe. And we are several days now into a lockdown on nearly 2 million people who are not fully vaccinated. In the Netherlands, Dutch health authorities say they are running short on COVID-19 tests. The country registered more than 20,000 new COVID-19 cases for the second day in a row. That is the highest number of daily cases for the country since the beginning of the pandemic. Hospital admissions are also on the rise. Earlier this month, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's government reimposed a partial lockdown. The World Health Organization says COVID-19 deaths in Europe rose by 5% in the last week. That makes the continent the only region in the world where COVID-19 deaths have increased over that period. COVID deaths in other parts remain stable or even declining, according to the latest data. Out of 3.3 million new infections reported, 2.1 million of them came from Europe. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has admitted he made a mistake in his handling of a sleaze scandal. He's faced fiery question sessions from lawmakers in Westminster. One, a quizzing of 2 hours by the House of Commons Liaison Committee. A major focus there was the case of Owen Paterson, the former Conservative MP found to have been involved in paid lobbying. Boris Johnson says his initial attempts to defend Mr Paterson were an error.
I think it was a very sad case, but I think there's no question that he had fallen foul of the rules on paid advocacy as far as I could see from the report. I think the question that people wanted to establish was whether or not, given the particularly tragic circumstances, he'd had a fair right to appeal. And
he had an appeal. His appeal was heard endlessly, both by the committee.
Yes, but Mr. Brown, I wish to restate that informing the impression that the former member for North Shropshire had not had a fair process, I may well have been mistaken. But that was certainly the impression that many people seem to have.
Do you recognise that, given your responsibility to uphold the ministerial code, to uphold the rules,
yes,
to uphold the standards, it's really important that you should not give any impression that when there is an independent report that found on 14 occasions of paid lobbying, that somehow you think that's okay? Can you clarify you don't think it's okay, and you don't think that Owen Paterson did was right?
Of course I don't, and that was the first thing I said when I began on this subject 2 weeks ago. Okay, and frankly, I think I think it is extraordinary that colleagues sometimes do behave in this way, and it is quite right that the Commissioner is able to investigate and to hold them to account. I think I've always sought to do, and I think the committee will agree that I've accepted that it was a mistake and that it was my mistake. All we wanted to do was to see whether, in view of the particular and frankly tragic circumstances of the case, there was any scope for cross-party agreement on an appeals process. That was all we were trying to do.
Well, if anything, those exchanges were relaxed compared to earlier back and forth between Boris Johnson and Labour leader Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle involved as well.
I don't want to fall out about it. I've made it very clear. It is Prime Minister's questions. It's not for the opposition to answer your question. Whether we like it or not, those are the rules of the game that we're all into, and we play by the rules, don't we? And we respect this House, so let's respect the House. Prime Minister, sit down. Prime Minister, I'm not going to be challenged. You may be the Prime Minister of this country, but in this House, I'm in charge, and we're going to carry on.
Mr. Speaker, when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. When somebody in his party misbehaves, he tries to get them off the hook. I lead, he covers up. Let's try another issue. We know that Owen Paterson was a paid lobbyist for Randox. We know he sat in on a call between Randox and the minister responsible for handling health contracts. We know that Randox has been awarded government contracts worth almost £600 million without competition or tender. Against that backdrop, the public are concerned that taxpayers' money may have been influenced by paid lobbying. There's only one way to get to the bottom of this: a full, transparent investigation.
Well, last month, Conservative MPs initially voted to halt a proposed 30-day suspension of Owen Paterson, and that was with Downing Street's backing. Details of other MPs' high-paying second jobs have been in the spotlight since. In particular, former Attorney General Geoffrey Cox, who's earned millions of pounds for legal work in recent years and spent several periods working abroad on non-parliamentary business. On Wednesday, British MPs backed moves to curb their ability to take in jobs, although the opposition claims the Johnson government has watered down its proposals. For more, let's go to WION correspondent Benji Hire, who is joining us live from London. And Benji, MPs did pass a government amendment to proposals from the opposition Labour Party. What happens next?
Well, straightforwardly, Ollie, these new rules are not settled for another 10 weeks or